So we see a lot of people making damascus on YouTube. It seems to be a big fad, very popular, and it seems to be the thing that everyone's wanting to do. But one thing that's not talked about very often, which I wanted to just do a quick video on, fairly quick for my videos, is damascus safety, because really it's a topic that, if everyone's going to be doing it, should be brought up. Now, there's some common sense things like have a fire extinguisher handy, have a fire blanket handy if you're using a coal forge or some sort of solid fuel forge. Now, the reason that you would want to actually keep fire safety equipment around when making damascus, and really, if you're forging, you should be keeping it around anyway, but the reason you want it definitely on hand and maybe placed somewhere that is easy to reach is because of what you don't see when you make damascus. Now, this is only going to apply to certain styles of damascus billet. There's two real sort of styles, main styles. There are stacked billets with sort of tack weld lines around the outside to stop it from warping open. And then there is the style that is popularized by master smith Kyle Royer, where the entire billet is sealed. He'll actually put sheet metal around the edges and seal the entire thing. This is more applicable to the former style, the open billet, where you can actually visibly see the seams between the layers in your damascus. And this also only really applies to hitting it, not squishing it. Although they come with their own squishing billets in forge presses comes with its own various dangers. They're a lot less dramatic. So I'm talking about exposed seams on the sides of your billet and hitting it to set the weld. Now, the reason that there are extra dangers with this is that generally you'll put some sort of flux on the outside, and that flux will use a capillary action to creep in between the layers of your billet. It sucks into those tiny little gaps between each layer, and it starts dissolving all of the impurities that are in there, scale and things like that, dissolving them down, and it sits there until you bring it out of the fire, place it on your anvil, and give it a good whack. And as soon as you give it a good whack, all of those layers squish together even harder, and all of that flux squeezes out the sides very violently, carrying with it slag, molten metal, all sorts of horrible stuff that is on fire and burning. And you see these beautiful dramatic arcs of spark that shoot out. And it's very cool to watch. However, you're focused on the work and you can't necessarily see where those sparks are landing. Now, I have a fairly open plan workshop, and there's dry timber and things all over the place, and I have to keep fairly attentive to that sort of thing, much more so than your average person would be. However, that being said, any workshop would have things like steel wool, which doesn't take much to actually take a spark and light up, flammable chemicals, solvents and things like that, that a tiny spark is enough to set it off. There's all sorts of fire risks that are, in your mind, well out of the way of the forging area, that can be reached very easily by the 3 or 4 meter sometimes spray of molten slag that comes out of setting a open seam damascus billet with hammer blows. Now, I did a billet just yesterday with my mate Adam, and it was quite a big billet. It was about 900 gram billet, and only 13 layers for that first initial set. And when we set the weld, we actually looked at each other afterwards and thought, well, that was fairly anticlimactic. We were expecting a lot more drama. There was, nothing happened. But we had also been filming it in slow motion from 2 different angles. And what we saw on the slow motion shocked us at just how much goes on that the human eye just doesn't pick up, either because you're not concentrating on what's going on around you, you're focused on the work, or it just happens too fast. I'm going to show you this footage. I've changed them to match them up so you can actually see a wide angle shot and then a close angle shot. And what I want you to actually take note of is on the different hits what happens. There's 3 hits to set the weld, because it's a long billet, so I do one in the center at the back, and then in the middle, and then at the front, to try and push things out towards the edges, push any impurities out. The first hit sends a shower of sparks. It's pretty much the same as what Adam and I saw with our eyes. The second hit, however, produces not just a much larger shower of sparks, but it actually shoots a giant gob of dross off. From the perspective here, you'll see it go off and to the side. That actually went out of my forge and into the yard. Now, I've been careful to only do this at a time where it's safe, where the ground is moist, etc., because I'm responsible about it. Know, but sometimes accidents happen, and being aware that this sort of thing can go on when you're setting Damascus like this is very important to know these things and see it happen to somebody else so that you can actually have an idea of what to expect yourself. But the big one is the third hit. The third hit was the hit on the end of the billet. So it had the biggest, widest spray, because if you think of a rectangular billet, and I'm holding it at this end here, when I hit here, it's going to go out here and here. When I go out here, it's going to go out here and here. But when I hit here, it's going to go out here, here, and here. So the third hit's the big one. And the third hit, actually, even though Adam stood back, he copped it right in the face with it. He wasn't hurt, luckily. He tucked his beard in, kept it out of the way. He had safety protection on, he had PPE. But on that one day that you may not, or you have somebody watching that wasn't expected to be there and they don't have PPE, that could be a very dangerous situation where you could cause some pretty nasty injury. You can also notice, you'll see that the side-on GoPro that we used to do the close-up shot is clipped to the hand crank blower's base. So keep an eye on that on the third hit. It cops a shower that's very, very aggressive. That could have just as easily been a bottle of some flammable chemical, or a pile of wood, or scrap paper or something that you've got lying around, something flammable, and that could just keep burning and burning, and you're focused on the work and you don't notice this smoldering fire going on. Now, I have to note again, you have to pay attention just how far these gobs of molten material will travel. Up to 3 or 4 meters from a hand hammer blow. A power hammer would probably even send them even further. So be aware of them. And I'm going to show you this footage, and I'm going to play it back a couple of times just so that you can see the entire process. So take note of the differences on the first, second, and third hit. And by the third hit, the weld was set, and there were no more sparks and slag flying off it. So check this out.
There was a time when a day wouldn't go by without you burning cigarette holes, the thin film of my mind. But how my heels have wounded well, some days you just can't tell exactly from it where it was that I fell.
So, yeah, pretty dramatic. And I have to stress again, Adam and I were standing right there, and we saw none of this with our eyes. It took slow motion photography to actually make it visible. So if it's not visible to us, we can't be aware of it happening, and we can't keep an eye on where all of those sparks landed in our workshop. So just something to consider. It's very exciting, especially for people to do their first Damascus weld, or beginners that are trying it out. It's very easy to get overexcited about doing it and not pay as much attention as you could to your safety. A lot of people have open quench tanks, have extra solvent bottles, WD-40, or all sorts of things that are flammable around their workshop. Even clothing, copping a cotton t-shirt, copping a full load of molten metal on that, you can catch on fire yourself. I wear a lot of flannelette. And it's a danger that you have to be aware of, and that's why blacksmith aprons are quite good. But potentially something you hadn't thought of, or maybe hadn't seen yourself because you may not use slow motion cameras. But hopefully you found this interesting. Just a quick video from me today. Keeping you safe. I'll be back with another video soon. I've got one planned that will be coming up hopefully in the next few days. In the meantime, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe if you haven't already. And check out my Patreon. I'm offering some cool stuff over there. I also sell the stuff that I make very safely on Etsy, so check that out. All the links are below, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.
The pitiful wind slamming of the door, and such beauty I've seen in the back of my dreams, and the treachery in the acquisition of a form thought untamed. But I'm cutting its mane for the parade.